Shoot, 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 shoot.
Hi guys, welcome. It's your boy Rent City, episode 77 of Sports and Shorts of Sorts. Just like we do every episode, I'm going to jump right to those jerseys. A lot of good 77s out there. There's some dynamites out there in a lot of leagues. So it's where do we start? Living in Canada for 77s, you got to start with the NHL. And it was a toss-up because there's two dynamite players. And you're like, which one do you go with? And like I start every morning, we'll start with the coffee. Legendary defenseman Paul Coffey, Ontario-born Coffey, drafted 6th overall by the Oilers in 1980 draft. He suited up for the Oilers, donning the 7 to start his career. But Coffey would go on to have some phenomenal season with the Oilers, help them win he was a big part of those dynamic teams of the 80s, winning championships with them. 3 Stanley Cup winning teams during that time. And in that first Stanley Cup winning season, they beat the Flyers in seven games to win the Cup. And Coffey became only the second defenseman in NHL history to score 40 goals in a season. The very next season, Coffey helped the Oilers repeat as champs, picking up his first Norris Trophy as well, best defenseman in the league. The next season, Coffey would add another Norris Trophy. But the Oilers would fall short in the postseason. But the next season, Oilers back to the Cup, beating the Flyers again in 7. And that Game 7 was the last time we'd see Paul Coffey in an Oilers jersey. He wanted a wage increase and held out. Instead, the Oilers traded Coffey to the Penguins. Rod Buskus was already wearing the 7 in Pittsburgh, so Coffey wore the 77, which he'd wear for the rest of his career, other than a short stint in Boston, where he wore the 74. During his time in Pittsburgh, Coffey would continue to put up insane numbers. He'd win a 4th and final Stanley Cup of his career with the Penguins. That same season, he'd pass Dennis Potvin as to become the career leaders in goals, assists, and points by a defenseman. After winning the Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh, Coffey was involved with a deal that sent him to the Los Angeles Kings, reuniting him with former Oiler teammate Wayne Gretzky and Jari Kurri for 2 seasons. After his brief time out west, Coffey got traded to the Red Wings, and with the Red Wings, he'd lead the team in scoring during the lockout-shortened season, the first time he had ever achieved that feat. In that same season, he was rewarded with his 3rd and final Norris Trophy. In a 2-year stretch, Coffey helped get the Wings to the Stanley Cup, where they were beaten by the underdog Devils. In the following season, he helped the Wings to a 62-win regular season, only to lose to their rivals, the Colorado Avalanche. After a falling out with the Red Wings, with the Red Wings coach Scotty Bowman, Coffey was traded to the Whalers. In the trade, the Red Wings got Shanahan out of the deal, a move that Coffey was not a fan of. He expressed that as much and only played 20 games in Hartford before getting sent to the Flyers. We helped the Flyers get to the Stanley Cup in 97, where he faced an old team, the Detroit Red Wings, and he did not have a good series. After taking a Darren McCarty hit, he'd suffer a concussion, missing the rest of the series. Flyers got swept. Coffey would then have that brief stint with Chicago, only suiting up for 10 games before going to the Hurricanes, where he played a few seasons before playing 18 games in Boston to wrap up his career. Paul Coffey holds or shares 33 NHL records in the regular season and playoffs. Second on time and on a few defensive point lists. You'll find out who's number 1 right away here. But a few wild records Coffey does have. Most goals by a defenseman, regular season and playoffs combined. Most goals in one season by a defenseman at 48. Most 80-point seasons by a defenseman at 8. And that's just the tip of his regular season records. It's crazy how good Paul Coffey actually was. Played in 14 All-Star games, those 4 Stanley Cups I mentioned, 3 James Norris trophies. He's represented Canada on the international level, winning 3 gold medals in the Canada Cup. Of course, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, named one of the 100 greatest NHL players. And although he's number 77 on this list, like I said, his 7 is what he wore in Edmonton, which is retired. Coffey played so similar to Bobby Orr, and that's why he's a fan favorite for so many. Like I said, another hockey legend wore 77, who, like Coffey, some consider him to be the best defenseman to ever play in the NHL. I'm, of course, talking about Ray Bourque. After killing it in the QMJHL, Bourque was drafted 8th overall by the Boston Bruins in its 1979 NHL draft. Much like Coffey, Bourque started his career wearing the number 7. He was an immediate impact for the Bruins, winning the Calder Memorial Trophy for Rookie of the Year, as well as making the All-Star game. And that was a common theme for Bourque, who would go on to make 19 consecutive All-Star games. Bourque would share the captain duties for the Bruins before becoming the sole captain of the team, a role he would hold until he left the team. During that time, he'd go on to win 5 Norris trophies for best defenseman in the league. He'd have a really cool way of announcing his number change as well. The number 7 that he wore, it was also worn by Phil Esposito in Boston for many years. And after Esposito left the Bruins, the number 7 was worn by 2 more players before it came to Bourque. 6 years after Esposito retired and 3 years before he went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, the Bruins decided to retire the 7 and said Bourque would be the last person to ever wear it. And whenever that time was done with it, it would go up in the rafters. And Bourque, being the stand-up guy he is, surprised Esposito at his retirement. No one was aware Bourque had on 2 jerseys, and just before Esposito was going to speak, Bourque skated over to him, removed his jersey, handed it to Esposito, a move that showed him surrendering the jersey to its original owner. And from that day forward, Ray Bourque wore the 77. Despite being a regular All-Star and breaking numerous Boston records, the Bruins never had any Stanley Cup success while he was there. The 96-97 season, the Bruins missed out on the playoffs, ending a 29-season streak of making it to the postseason, and there were some more years of struggle. And as Bourque's career went on, he was entering the chant of best player to not win a championship, a chat you don't want to be a part of. And that's when the lifelong Bruin made the tough decision to request a trade in search of a cup, and the Bruins sent Bourque to the Colorado Avalanche. And although he was only there a season and a half, he was still a force on the ice. One hell of a veteran leader in the locker room, and his half season in Colorado ended with elimination. But the following season, Bourque's last, the Avalanche would make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, where they faced off with the New Jersey Devils, and Bourque was big in the series, even scoring the game-winning goal in Game 3, and the Avalanche would win the Stanley Cup in 7 games. And after that win, Captain Joe Sakic broke the tradition of being the first guy to skate with the cup, as captains do. He let Ray Bourque be the first to skate with the cup. No one had to wait longer than Ray Bourque to raise a cup, playing in 1,612 regular season games and 214 playoff games before getting his name added to the Stanley Cup. And after winning the cup, he'd take it through Boston to share it with all the fans that loved him over his career. And a few days later, he's like, that's it. I'm done. And he had just barely passed the before-mentioned Paul Coffey for most goals, assists, and points by a defenseman. And Bourque still sits atop those lists. 410 goals, 1,169 assists, 1,579 points. Bourque's also represented Canada at the international level, playing for Canada in the Canada Cup, 81, 84, and 87. And he was also part of the Canadian Olympic team in the 98 Olympics in Nagano. A tough tournament for Canada where they didn't even medal. But what more can you say about Ray Bourque? All-time leader in points for defensemen, numerous individual accolades. He got that Stanley Cup. He holds and shares numerous NHL records. Shoe-in for an induction to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Also named to the 100 greatest NHL players list. His number 77 is retired by 2 franchises. Of course, Boston retired it, and the Colorado Avalanche retired it for his short but very impactful time there. He's one of only 9 players to have his jersey retired by more than one team. The other people on that list consist of Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, fellow Avalanche teammate Patrick Waugh, Tim Horton, Red Kelly, and Scott Niedermayer. It's also pretty insane that 2 of the greatest defensemen to ever play in the NHL both started their careers with the 7, and then wore the 77 most of their career. It's crazy. We go away from the defenseman for a hot second, talk about one of the best assisting players in the NHL ever, Adam Oates. He wore the 12, the 34, and 21 before getting the 77, a number he'd wear the rest of his career. And in Oates' younger days, he played both hockey and box lacrosse, and some say the latter was his preferred sport. Lit it up in lacrosse, picking up tons of accolades, but left the game completely to concentrate on hockey. And he admits he was a bit of a jerk growing up, spending too much time partying, leading to him dropping out of school and working as a gas attendant. And at 19, he played some hockey in the Ontario Provincial Junior A Hockey League, putting up big numbers, but going unselected in the NHL draft, and many scouts believed he was just too slow to play in the NHL. And after going undrafted, he'd return to high school to try to get his diploma, where he was recruited to play the Rensselaer Polytech Institute. At RPI, Oates would lead the team in assists of the 3 seasons he was there. His sophomore season, he broke records for points and assists, leading him to getting named the East Coast Athletic Conference second All-Star team. That's a mouthful. Becoming the first RPI player to earn a berth on the NCAA All-American team since 1965. Following season, he'd break a bunch of his own records, again getting named as an NCAA All-American, even a Hobey Baker Award finalist, helping RPI win the 85 national championship. That's crazy. As NHL teams looked at him, notes he'd forgo his senior season to sign a 4-year deal with the Red Wings, getting paid as the highest paid rookie in the NHL. After getting a goal and assist in his debut, he'd struggle a bit, getting sent down to the AHL to play with the Adniran Red Wings, bouncing back and forth between the two clubs. And after the season ended, he'd go to play in the AHL playoffs and help the Red Wings win the Calder Cup championship. Following season, Oates was strictly an NHL player, and he put up big numbers. Despite going into a season with a groin injury, he'd get back on the ice playing great, and the Red Wings were looking to go in another direction, unfortunately, sending Oates to the St. Louis Blues, and many consider trading Oates to be one of the worst trades in Red Wings history. Oates was heartbroken to leave his first NHL team, but he fit in well with the Blues, and he'd play on the top line alongside Hall of Famer Brett Hull. Pair obviously dubbed the Hull and Oates line, putting up outrageous numbers. Oates would break the 100-point plateau for the first time of many times and help Brett Hull score 72 and 86 goals in back-to-back seasons. Oates would make 2 All-Star games with the Blues and sign a 4-year contract extension to stay with the club. But after seeing some teammates get bigger contracts, he felt underpaid and asked for a raise and threatened to walk away, even getting some boos from the fans because of it. And the situation was handled by shipping Oates off to the Bruins. And with the Bruins, he put up some big numbers. 3 more All-Star games, bringing his career total to 6. And as discussed in the Ray Bork portion, the Bruins weren't really contending in the playoffs to the point that Oates spoke out publicly, berating the team management, questioning whether the team is rebuilding or what, because he had no idea. Less than 2 weeks after that blow-up, he was traded to the Capitals, and he didn't initially report to camp, demanding a higher contract, and he would report eventually. In the offseason, he continued to the point where he said he'd retire rather playing with the Capitals, but the two sides came to an agreement, and Oates clicked with the talented offense, helping getting the Caps to the 98 Stanley Cup Finals, where they did get swept in their first ever franchise Stanley Cup appearance. And after Dale Hunter left the Capitals, Oates became the 9th captain in franchise history. During that time, Oates became just the 8th player in NHL history to reach 1,000 career assists. The Caps out of playoff contention and Oates' contract expiring at the end of the season, Oates was traded to the Flyers, where they were hoping Oates would be the final piece to a cup run, but they were knocked out in the first round, surprisingly, by the Senators. The Flyers let Oates walk in free agency, where he joined the Mighty Ducks, and with the Ducks, he helped them reach the Stanley Cup Finals in 2003. But just like his last Stanley Cup appearance, he wouldn't win it, and the Ducks would lose to the Devils in 7 games. After that season, Oates tested the free agency waters again, signing with the Oilers to finish off his career. And he's considered one of the best and unselfish playmakers ever, leading the NHL in assists on 3 different occasions, finishing in the top 10 12 different times. And he's the only player in NHL history to center 3 different 50-goal scorers: Brett Hull, Cam Neely, and Peter Bondra. But despite those crazy numbers, I still think it's safe to say Adam Oates is underrated in the history of the game. And he was honored by getting inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, though, and he's dipped into coaching his former team, the Capitals, joining them mid-season where he helped them to a division title, only to struggle the following season and lose his job. But we'll stick with centers. Number 77, I'm talking about Pierre Turgeon. Pierre Turgeon was a star on the ice from a young age, did receive flack in the 87 World Juniors when there was a bench-clearing brawl between Canada and the Soviet Union. And Turgeon was the only player not leaving the benches, and this coach was like, get out there. And I guess a lot of players lost respect for him that day, and Turgeon addressed the issue, saying, that wasn't my job. I didn't have to fight. He'd still get drafted number 1 overall by the Sabres in the 87 draft, and Turgeon had an immediate impact in Buffalo, helping get the club to the Stanley Cup playoffs after a 3-year drought. And even after making an All-Star appearance in Buffalo, after 4 seasons there, he was traded to the Islanders, and it was with the Isles that he really took off. 58 goals and 132 points helped the Islanders make a deep playoff run. They'd ultimately lose out to the eventual Stanley Cup winning Montreal Canadiens. The last time the Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. And during those playoffs, the first round was a scene we still talk about today. Turgeon scored a goal to put the Islanders up 5-1 in Game 6. And Dale Hunter creamed Turgeon from behind after the goal. Turgeon would miss the 6 games of the next round, and Dale Hunter received the then record 21-game suspension for the dirty hit after the goal. With the Islanders, Turgeon made 2 more All-Star games and he'd win the only Lady Byng Memorial Trophy of his career. The Islanders were looking to rebuild after the 94-95 lockout season, and Turgeon was traded to the Canadiens, where he became the team captain during his brief time, and he'd make an all-star game where he almost recorded a 100-point season. He'd get traded to the Blues, where he fit in and averaged more than 70 points a season, making his fifth and final all-star appearance. He'd leave the Blues to join the Stars before joining the Avalanche to wrap up his career. In Colorado, he had to wear 87 because we already talked about the Avalanche retiring Bork's 77, and he became the 34th player in NHL history to score 500 goals. After retiring from the game, it took 13 years of eligibility to finally make the Hockey Hall of Fame, and he's also the 9th number 1 overall pick to make it in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Joining the likes of Dale Hawerchuk, Guy Lafleur, Mario Lemieux, Eric Lindros, Mike Modano, David Perreault, Dennis Potvin, and Matt Sundin. Pierre Turgeon was a great forward that lived up to the hype of the number 1 overall pick and had a pretty damn good career. And for our next 77, we're going back to the defensive side, a current player and a damn good one too. I'm talking about the guy who's the new captain in Tampa Bay, the first since Steven Stamkos left, Victor Hedman. He began playing junior hockey in his native Sweden, playing at a high level, and boosted his draft stock with a great performance at the World Juniors. That led to the Tampa Bay Lightning drafting him 2nd overall in the 2009 NHL entry draft. One selection after the Islanders selected John Tavares. Hedman would make his debut later that year, and his 6'7" frame was thrown to the Wolves early. Initially, he didn't quite live up to the hype of that draft choice, but during the 2012-13 lockout season, Hedman went to the KHL, and the following season back in the NHL, he had more of a breakout season, putting up career numbers in goals, assists, points. His game kept getting better, and he'd make his first All-Star game in 2017. The following season, he got even better and made his 2nd All-Star game, also winning the Norris Trophy for Best Defenseman. Next season, he put up an All-Star appearance, and it'd be the first time the Lightning would lift the Stanley Cup. Hedman and the Lightning would beat the Dallas Stars in 6 games to win the trophy, and Hedman's dominant play on the way to the Cup earned him a Conn Smythe Trophy, given out to the best playoff performer that season. Following season, Hedman would make the All-Star game, but he'd help the Lightning back to the Stanley Cup, where they beat the Canadiens in 5 to win back-to-back cups. Hedman was continued to be one of the best defensemen in the league. He's always a finalist for the Norris Trophy, and he was recently signing an extension to keep him in Tampa Bay. So, again, Hedman, he's the new captain in town. He's the face of the franchise. He's also represented Sweden internationally, as I alluded to. 2 silver medals at the World Junior level, the World Championships, 2 bronze medals and a gold. And a little fun fact on how Hedman wore the number 77. He liked watching Swedish superstar Peter Forsberg, who he honored number 21 from the Colorado Avalanche. That became his team, and Ray Bourque was one of his favorite players. So he wore 77 to honor the legendary player we already spoke about in this episode. So full circle there. Victor Hedman, he won't be happy with just 2 Stanley Cups. He'll be trying to bring another one to Tampa Bay in the post-Steven Stamkos era. Sticking with another current player in the NHL, next 77 on our list, a guy who started his career with a different number but's grown into the 77. Talking about American hockey player TJ Oshie. Born in the state of Washington, he grew up playing hockey in the Northwest. But following his parents' divorce, he ended up moving to Minnesota, where his parents originally were from, and his game grew there, attending the University of North Dakota, leading to him getting drafted 24th overall by the St. Louis Blues. He stayed in university, and while playing with the Fighting Sioux, he earned some individual accolades. I've said that twice now, helping the team go on a run to the NCAA tournament. He'd forgo his senior season at North Dakota to sign with the Blues, where he wore the 74 and became a fan favorite. And after some productive seasons there, he'd go to Washington, and when he joined the Capitals, he had to change to 77, because if you remember from episode 74, John Carlson was wearing 74. And since then, TJ Oshie has worn 77, and he's grown into an even better player, putting up career numbers in Washington, and that he was a massive reason the Capitals won the 2018 Stanley Cup. First Stanley Cup ever in their franchise history. Oshie's continuing to put up big numbers, and because of some tough hits to the head, though, he's dealt with some concussion issues. He's currently had 4 reported concussions in his NHL career, and he's looking for a bounce-back season as his numbers have dipped a bit over the last few years. He's also representing the United States at the international level, winning a bronze medal at the World Championships. Fantastic American player that's known for some very big goals. Another current player donning the number 77, he's a youngster, Kirby Dach, 23-year-old, playing for the Montreal Canadiens. He played in my neck of the woods, suiting up for the Saskatoon Blades in the WHL. And his play in the dub led to the Blackhawks selecting him third overall in the 2019 draft. He'd signed with the Blackhawks and made his debut pretty immediate. Then during the playoff bubble, he'd go on to score his first NHL playoff goal, becoming the sixth teenager for the Blackhawks to do such a feat, and the first since Jeremy Roenick in '89. Doc will go on to miss the following season after sustaining a wrist injury in the World Juniors. He'd re-aggravate the injury, returning to the lineup, missed the final few games of the season. The following season, he struggled, and the Blackhawks, they're having a turnover, and they didn't see him in the future where he'd get traded to Montreal. And the team believed he'd live up to the hype and the potential that had him drafted third overall, giving him a contract extension, and he's credited head coach Martin St. Louis in allowing him to go out and have fun again. Entering last season, there were some higher expectations on Kirby, and things were looking good, but in only his second game of the season, he'd take a hit and sustained a torn ACL and MCL. Season-ending surgery, but everyone's rooting for Dak to get back out there and show people what he can do. And he's had some experience playing for Canada. Like I said, playing the World Juniors, where he ended up injuring his wrist and missing most of the tournament, but he's only 23 years old. He has plenty of time to turn his career around here. Wrapping up the NHL portion of the 77 mentions, we go to 22-year-old German center J.J. Peterka. He made his debut in the native Germany with Red Bull München of the Deutsche Eishockey Liga. His play led to the Sabres selecting him 34th overall in the 2020 draft. He was initially slated to be a first-round pick, so Buffalo was thrilled to get him early in the second round. He spent most of his time in North America playing for Buffalo's AHL affiliate, the Rochester Americans. After basically playing the whole season in the AHL, he only made 2 appearances for the Sabres, but he did earn a spot on the AHL rookie team. Peterka would get the full-time call-up the following season, and after registering 32 points, he'd raise that total to 50 last season. If you haven't bought any stock in Peterka yet, you might want to. I see the German just getting better and better. He's even represented Germany at the senior level and was a member of the 2021 World Championship team that knocked off Team USA on the way to a bronze medal. Their first medal at the World Championship since 1953. He had 6 goals and 6 assists in 10 games for Germany. Again, 22 years old, with a bright future ahead of him. We're going to switch things up and go from hockey to the NBA court, starting with one of the biggest names on this list internationally for sure. Talking about Slovenian superstar Luka Doncic. The 25-year-old superstar has been playing professionally since he was 16 years old with Real Madrid. He's always been playing against older and bigger opponents, but like Luka's done his whole NBA and professional career, he's rocked it, even from those young ages. And when he was young, he looked up to Greek basketball player Vasilis Spanoulis, saying he was enchanted by him, and that's why he wore number 7 at Real Madrid to honor Spanoulis, which he still kind of does, but with his own Luka twist on it by wearing the 77 with Dallas. And Luka said LeBron James was also a player he liked watching growing up, which makes it super cool how he gets to and has played against him so many times. And as Luka's role grew with Real Madrid, we get to see more and more of what Doncic was capable of. He'd appear in preseason games against NBA competition, going up against Russell Westbrook when he was back in OKC. And you could see some promise there, especially when he led Slovenia to gold at the Eurobasket 2017 in Turkey. And then his year with Real Madrid, yikes, winning the EuroLeague MVP, EuroLeague Finals MVP, Real Madrid winning the EuroLeague Finals, numerous accolades on the European level, the Spanish domestic level, that dominant play at such a young age, just crazy. And after that season, Doncic declared for the 2018 draft. There's still some teams uncertain about a teenager coming over from Europe, but that did spook a few teams, but others were enamored by him, as they should have been. And Luka got drafted 3rd overall by the Atlanta Hawks, selected after number 1 overall pick DeAndre Ayton by the Phoenix Suns, and Marvin Bagley III by the Sacramento Kings. Don't want to hate on Bagley III, but there are some Sam Bowie MJ vibes I'm getting from this draft class, but Bagley can turn it around. I feel he's a talented dude that can really turn to a great player, but we're talking Luka here, and his draft rights were traded to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for their 5th overall pick, Trae Young, and a first-round draft selection the following season. Dallas could not have been happier with the move so far. Luka Doncic is an NBA superstar, face of the league, winning Rookie of the Year's first season, obviously all rookie team. He's made it to 5 straight All-Star games, including All-NBA first team each of those 5 seasons. He's one of the best players in the world, and he's only 25 years old. He's coming off his first trip to the NBA Finals this past season. The Dallas Mavericks lost in 5 games to the NBA champion Boston Celtics. Luka and his partner in crime, Kyrie Irving, will be looking to get back to the NBA Finals to finish the job this season. You also have marksman and half of the Splash Brothers, Klay Thompson, coming to town to see how he fits in with Luka in this club. I'm thinking maybe this is the year Luka adds his first NBA MVP trophy to that illustrious trophy case he has. But before Luka was on the scene, the most recognizable 77 that first that came to mind, another guy from Europe, Serbian forward Vladimir Radmanovic. He was born in Yugoslavia before the nation split up, and Radmanovic played basketball wherever his family moved because his dad was a colonel in the Yugoslav People's Army and he moved around a bit. So his play in Europe led to the Seattle Supersonics drafting Vladimir Radmanovic 12th overall in the 2001 NBA draft. As a rookie, he earned selection to the NBA All-Rookie second team, and his play improved each season. He was a legit candidate for Most Improved Player in 2003-2004, averaging 12 points and 5 boards. He was a consistent six-man threat for the Sonics as well. But after voicing frustration of not being a starter, Vlad was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers, where he would average double figures for the last time in his NBA career. He'd leave the Clippers for their inner-city rivals, the Lakers, where he's supposed to be one of the finishing pieces on a team for his length and ability to spread the floor. But he'd be referred to as a space cadet, or my favorite Martian, by Lakers head coach Phil Jackson, referencing the Radmanovic being out of position and taking wild three-point shots. He did face some backlash as a Laker, though. He sustained a separated shoulder injury, saying he fell on a patch of ice in Utah during the 2007 NBA All-Star Game, and he'd be out approximately 8 weeks. However, it was actually revealed by Radmanovic later that he sustained the injury while snowboarding. And in his contract with the Lakers, there was a ban on Vlad parting in activities that could involve significant risk or injury, including skiing or snowboarding. Rather than have this contract ripped up, he was given a $500,000 fine for lying, and he'd eventually get traded to the Bobcats, where he'd play sparingly. And from the Bobcats, he'd go to the Warriors, and after wearing the 7 with the Clippers, Lakers, and Bobcats, Vlad went back to wearing the more recognizable 77, where he'd wrap up his NBA career suiting up for the Atlanta Hawks and Chicago Bulls. Radmanovic has also represented his nation in international competitions like the World Championships, Olympics, and Eurobasket, suiting up for Serbia and Montenegro before they each became their own independent nations. Vladimir Radmanovic is a little bit ahead of his time, like the 6'11 sharpshooter would definitely fit in today's game like that. Sticking with European basketball players, Rock 77, our next mention is one of the tallest players to ever play in the NBA or in any of the big sports. Talking about the Romanian giant, George Muresan. The 7'7" Muresan had appearance with average heights, but he grew to this massive stature due to a pituitary gland disorder called acromegaly. Hopefully I didn't butcher every part of that, but I feel I did. He and Manute Bol share the record as 2 of the tallest players in the NBA, being 7'7". The reason that Muresan would wear the number 77 was because of his height. A little play on words there. Muresan would play professionally in his native Romania, winning the Romanian League before moving on to the French League, where he'd help his club win the French League Cup. His great play in Europe led to the Washington Bullets drafting him in the early second round of the 93 NBA draft. Excuse me. And although George Muresan would battle some injuries each of his first few seasons, his game improved with more playing time, and he'd win the Most Improved Player of the Year in 96, averaging a career-high 14.5 points per game, 9.6 boards, and 2.3 blocks per game, also leading the league in field goal percentage that season. Following season, he'd again lead the league in field goal percentage, and Muresan would leave Washington for the New Jersey Nets. But injuries had become more prevalent, and he'd only play 31 games over 2 seasons with the Nets. He'd get healthy enough to return to France to play with his old club, Pau Orthez, and he'd again win the French League. He'd retire from the game for good and return back to the United States, where he still resides. Because of his huge stature, Muresan has appeared in commercials, music videos, and even movies, starring as the title character in the 1998 film My Giant with Billy Crystal, so that's kind of cool. Muresan will be remembered as more for his efforts on the court, I think, because when he was healthy, he was a pretty big force on the court, literally and figuratively. Wrapping up the NBA portion, sticking with another European basketball player. These have all been European basketball players. Awesome. The next, number 77. Basketball guard is a former NBA player, recently signing with Panathinaikos of the Greek Basketball League. Big man Omer Yurtseven. The Turkish center was technically born in Uzbekistan by Turkish parents, but he'd go on to represent Turkey as a youngster. Also playing as a pro with Fenerbahce in the Turkish league. And while Yurtseven announced he wanted to play college basketball and was going to NC State, he suspended the first 9 games of the season due to his time playing professionally. He served his suspension, and after a few seasons at NC State, Yurtseven would transfer to Georgetown, and where his numbers increased, and he would have some big games with the Hoyas. He'd still go and draft in the 2020 draft, and he'd sign with the OKC Thunder's G League affiliate, the Oklahoma City Blue. He'd leave the Blue to join the Miami Heat, where he played well enough in Summer League to earn a roster spot. And I had to admit, I was a big fan watching Omer Yurtseven. He's a physical dude, not afraid to battle inside, but his time in Miami was derailed by a serious injury, and Yurtseven underwent surgery for an impingement, bone spur, and stress reaction in his left ankle. He returned to the court eventually, but struggled to find some time, and after his contract was done, he signed with the Jazz. He'd get waived the following year, and in search of more playing time, Yurtseven has gone back to Turkey to play with the reigning EuroLeague and Greek League champions, as I said, I said it right the first time, Panathinaikos, and I'm hoping he gets big minutes, reminds everyone what he can do, and comes back to an NBA franchise where he can be a regular contributor like he was pre-injury. If he plays like he did, before he hurt his ankle, I think he should be on an NBA roster. But we'll go to the league we usually have been starting with in the 60s and 70s, the NFL. We'll go to the number 77 NFL jersey mentions with one of the best offensive tackles of his generation, Willie Roaf. Roaf was born and raised in Arkansas. His father was a dentist. Mother was the first black woman to serve on the Arkansas Supreme Court, Andre Layton Roaf. And Roaf played basketball and football growing up. When he wasn't initially recruited, he thought of pursuing basketball, but he did get a scholarship to attend Louisiana Tech University, and as a Bulldog, Roaf was known for his considerable speed for such a large stature, earning consensus All-American selection his senior season, leading to Roaf getting drafted 8th overall in the 93 draft by the New Orleans Saints. And Roaf was named All-Rookie Team, and he made more of an impact his second season, though, earning his first of 7 Pro Bowls with the Saints, where he'd also earned his first team All-Pro selection. With the Saints, Willie Roaf became one of the best offensive tackles in the game, and after 9 seasons with the Saints, Roaf suffered a season-ending injury, which he was then traded to the Kansas City Chiefs the following season. Roaf made the Pro Bowl each year he was in Kansas City before calling it a career, bringing his career totals to 11 Pro Bowls, 7 in New Orleans, 4 in KC, 6 first-team All-Pros, 3 in New Orleans, 3 in KC, and 3 second-team All-Pros selections, 2 with the Saints and 1 with the Chiefs. An absolute great blocker in the passing game, and even better in the running game, leading to Roaf getting named to the NFL 1990s and 2000s All-Decade Team. He was also honored by the Saints, getting inducted into their Hall of Fame as well as their Ring of Honor. And Roaf was also inducted into the Pro and College Football Hall of Fame, a name that I heard tons growing up, and probably one we don't talk enough today, but Willie Roaf, one of the good ones. The next 77 from the NFL, we got to jump in the Ren City time machine, going back to talk about former offensive lineman Jim Parker. He grew up in Georgia, raised on a farm where he picked peaches and cotton as a boy. Started to play football and was getting pretty good at it. Moved to Ohio before his senior season to get some more exposure, and he wound up going to the Ohio State University. Played both sides of the ball, but was used with his size and speed to clear pathway as a blocker, and Parker was a big reason the Buckeyes went undefeated and won the national championship in 1954. And in college, Parker would earn 2-time first-team All-Big Ten, first-team All-American, unanimous All-American, and was a recipient of the Outland Trophy his senior season. And even received some Heisman Trophy votes, which we've talked about before on these jersey mentions. It's not very common for offensive linemen to get Heisman votes. That great collegiate play led to the Baltimore Colts drafting Parker 8th overall in the 1957 NFL Draft. And they were more inclined to passing than Ohio, and Parker would thrive in that position too. Starting at offensive tackle, he'd make 5 Pro Bowls. He moved to guard, and Parker was just as good there, making 3 more Pro Bowls at that position. During that time, he also made 9 first-team All-Pros and a single second-team All-Pro nod. With those talented Baltimore teams, Parker was a member of back-to-back NFL championships, winning the 1958 and 59 titles. In 67, Parker picked up a knee injury that ended his 139 consecutive game streak. And he'd only play 3 more games before calling it a career, saying he could never recover from that injury. And in retirement, the accolades continued to come in. Parker named the 1950s All-Decade Team, 75th, 100th NFL Anniversary Teams, inducted to the now Baltimore Ravens Ring of Honor, and his number 77 is retired by the Colts. That's the thing when you have cities and franchises and they're no longer involved with each other, because you have the Baltimore Ravens and the Indianapolis Colts. But regardless, his 77 is retired by the Colts. Parker was also inducted into the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of the best blockers to ever play in the NFL. Father of 14, grandfather to 23. He passed away in 2005 at the age of 71 from congestive heart failure and chronic kidney disease. And like I said, one of the best blockers, another guy that's underrated, I feel, in today's day. And while the Wren City Time Machine's going, we might as well go a little further to talk about halfback Red Grange, known as the Galloping Ghost and the Wheaton Iceman. In his early high school days, he'd lead Wheaton High School to an undefeated season, and in his senior season, they won every game except for one. And in that loss, Grange was knocked out and remained unconscious for 2 days, even having difficulty to speak when he woke up. He'd heal up, though, participating in track and field as well as football. And to help the family, he took a part-time job as an ice toter, which helped his core strength and earned him the nickname, the Wheaton Iceman. Grange would go to University of Illinois, where initially he planned to compete only in basketball and track, but changed his mind to join the football team. And in his first game against Nebraska, he'd score 3 touchdowns and was a big reason why the Fighting Illini won the 1923 national championship. Following season, he made national news when he faced off with the Michigan Wolverines in the new Memorial Stadium, which was built as a memorial to Illinois students and alumni who passed away in World War I. Michigan Wolverines came in as favorites, only to see Grange open the game up with a kickoff return, followed by 3 more touchdowns of 67, 56, 44 yards. All of this in the first 12 minutes of the game, and during his time in Illinois, he was twice named Consensus All-American, 3 times first-team All-Big Ten, also earning Big Ten MVP and unanimous All-American that same season. His great collegiate play also got his 77 retired by the university, and after his college playing days, there was no NFL draft, and Red Grange would just join the Chicago Bears. And this made people scoff because at this point in history, the college game was much more respected than the pro game. And with the Bears, Grange would attract tons of fans, put up some big numbers, and at one point, he and his agent looked to buying some of the Bears, or buying part of the Bears, but after they were turned down, they started their own team, the New York Yankees. Tried to enter the NFL, but territorial rights were held by the Giants, so Grange started up a 9-team league, the AFL. His league only lasted 1 full season, and after some time, Grange was back with the Bears in the NFL, where he was twice first-team All-Pro, member of 2 NFL championship-winning teams in Chicago, and 1932, the Bears beat the Portsmouth Spartans 9-0, where the Bears won again the following season, winning the 33 NFL championship, and a little bit more high-scoring affair, beating the Giants 23-21. His 77 has been retired by the Bears. He was named the NFL 1920s All-Decade Team. The Bears, they've also named Red Grange to the 100 greatest Bears of all time, and a lot of people credit Red Grange and his barnstorming tours he went on with these football teams to saving professional football in its earliest stages. Obviously, no-brainer for College and Pro Football Hall of Fames. He also used his popularity to bring audiences to the box office, appearing in movies 1 Minute to Play, Racing Romeo, and The Galloping Ghost, a nickname he carried for a while. But unfortunately, in his later stages of life, Red Grange would battle Parkinson's and passed away in 1991 at the age of 87. A guy who I enjoyed reading more about, and someone that's totally associated with the 77 when you look into his history. But we'll fly back to current times for our next 77. One of the best centers in the NFL right now, Detroit Lions center, Frank Ragnow. The Minnesota-born Ragnow would light it up in high school football, while also killing it at shot put, which, as we've discussed among several number 70 wearing linemen, they love the shot put. He received a lot of Div 1 offers, but accepted a scholarship to play at the University of Arkansas. His freshman season, he played 9 of 12 games, and as his role would increase over his time, he'd become one of the best centers in the SEC, earning second-team All-SEC honors and second-team All-American the following season. This play led to the Lions selecting Frank Ragnow 20th overall in the 2018 draft, and he'd initially get thrusted into the guard position with Graham Glasgow manning center. After Glasgow's departure to the Broncos, Ragnow took over the center position, and since Glasgow was released from the Broncos, he's come back to the Lions, where he's playing guard, and that's because Frank Ragnow's holding down that center spot. 2-time second-team All-Pro, 3 Pro Bowls. He's part of a very potent Lions offense, and it literally starts with him every play. Rolling a dominant current lineman, Dawn the 77, we go to offensive tackle Tyron Smith. Los Angeles-born Smith would go play college football close to town in USC. He initially started as a backup but worked his way into the starting lineup, and as he continued to develop his junior season, he earned first-team All-Pac-10 honors, as well as a recipient of the Morris Trophy. He'd forego his senior season as he felt his stock was pretty high, and he was correct as the Cowboys drafted Tyron Smith 9th overall. He was the best offensive lineman drafted in the first. He was the first offensive lineman drafted in the first round since Jerry Jones bought the team in 1989, and the highest lineman drafted by the franchise since John Nillen went 5th overall back in '66. Smith was a starter immediately, manning the right tackle position, and his great play led to him making the All-Rookie team. Following season, Smith got moved to the left tackle to protect the quarterback's blind side, and after one season at that position, he started getting better and better, making his first Pro Bowl. Be the first of 8 Pro Bowl appearances, and he'd make those with the Cowboys. All during that time, he'd make 2 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros, and when he was on the field, he was one of the best offensive tackles in the league. But he has had some injury issues over his 13 careers. Like I said, his 13-year career, and like I've said, all 13 of those seasons in Dallas. But Tyron Smith signed a 1-year, $20 million contract to join the Jets and protect Aaron Rodgers' blind side. So we'll see how that move works for him going forward. I don't want to jump too much into the coverage of the NFL because I have my weekly recaps, but I must say the Jets, 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 looking all right so far. But we'll wrap up our 77s in the NFL. Current NFL player, starting guard for the Cleveland Browns, Wyatt Teller. Virginia-born Teller would stay close to home playing with the Virginia Tech Hokies. And with the Hokies, Teller would get named first-team All-ACC his final season at the school, leaving the Buffalo Bills taking a chance on Teller in the 5th round of the 2018 draft. He's predominantly a backup, but started the last 7 games of his season there. And the next season, Teller was part of a trade that sent him to the Cleveland Browns, where again he started as a backup but worked his way into the starting lineup. He's been steady on that offensive line and remains a starting right guard today. He's been named the 2 second-team All-Pros and has made 3 consecutive Pro Bowls. Lots of pressure on Deshaun Watson to regain some of his old form, and a lot of that pressure was shared amongst the offensive line. And we'll wrap up our lengthy number 77 jersey mentions here. There's a bunch. There's some studs, though. We go to the baseball diamond, starting with current pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, right-handed pitcher Chris Flexen. Grown up, Flexen excelled in baseball as well as football, playing quarterback, and his ability to play both sports earned him the nickname Flex. Flexen sounds pretty good. He'd go on to play college baseball with the Arizona State Sun Devils. After getting drafted in the 14th round of the 2012 MLB draft by the New York Mets, he'd take the signing bonus to leave school and join the Mets organization, playing in the minor leagues, where he'd have to undergo Tommy John surgery. He'd return from that injury to continue to pitch in the minor leagues before finally getting that call up for his MLB debut against the Padres, becoming a member of some weird history, becoming just the 5th New York Met player in franchise history to give up a home run against the first major league batter he faced. After spending some time back and forth between the major leagues and minor leagues, Flexen would leave North America to sign with the KBO's reigning champion, the Doosan Bears, a team in the Korean League. He pitched pretty well with the team, so much so that he signed with the Seattle Mariners the following season. And returning to North America, he's part of a starting rotation but would transition to the relief pitcher with that club, where he'd get a sent for assignment with the Mariners. And after getting traded to the Mets, full circle, he'd appear with the team before getting released, where he joined the Rockies on a minor league contract, suiting up mostly for the Albuquerque Isotopes, where he'd spend some time in the major leagues with the Rockies before getting released. He signed a 1-year deal to join the Chicago White Sox. Maybe kind of regretting that decision, seeing how that season's gone for that club. The last 2 number 77s that come to mind from the baseball diamond, second baseman Andy Ibanez from the Tigers and right-hand pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, Joe Jimenez. Cuban-born Ibanez made his MLB debut with the Texas Rangers, and after a few seasons, he was claimed off waivers by the Detroit Tigers, and he still plays with the club today, hitting around .250 for a Tigers team who's really been a surprise after the trade deadline, trying to get into the AL wildcard. Puerto Rican pitcher Joe Jimenez signed with the Detroit Tigers as an undrafted free agent, working his way through the minor leagues before getting the call up with the Tigers. Pitching as a setup man for the Tigers, he'd make his first and only thus far All-Star game, making that All-Star squad in 2018. Jimenez pitched pretty well for the Tigers, but was moved to the Atlanta Braves in late of 2022, where he's done well with the Braves, earning a 3-year contract last November, and he's trying to help the Atlanta Braves get into the NL wild card. It's all getting wild there, but how about all the good the good players that wear number 77 coming in, doing these jersey mentions? You sometimes forget, but like Celine Dion sings, it's all coming back to me now, and wow, great 77s.